Hello everybody, and welcome to my analysis of Project Black Flag and whether it solves the Marshall caster problem. Now, if you want a refresher on my exact issues with the Marshall caster divide, I highly recommend you check out the description and the cards to see a link to my old video going over all of my various issues that Marshall characters have compared to casters, especially in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, to give some backstory, Black Flag was basically Kobold Press's offshoot of 5th edition that they decided to start working on after the OGL drama from earlier this year. I believe it's actually not even called Black Flag anymore. It's now called Tales of the Valiant or something like that. But it was called Black Flag at the time of this playtest, and they did already release a playtest that contains both their fighter and their wizard classes. Now, to be fair, I'm only going to be mostly focusing on the fighter class, and I'm only, based on this playtest, it only goes up to level 8, so we're probably not going to be spending too much time on this, but I am curious to see if they have made any notable changes to maybe try and improve this class and make the lives of marshals a little bit easier. And as usual for these kinds of reviews, I'm mostly just going to be going over this system in real time with everybody and kind of giving my general thoughts on everything. So this is going to be a lot less scripted and more ad hoc than my more usual videos. So without much further ado, let's get into the system. So before we actually even get to the fighter, it looks like they've added a wholly new system to the game in general, which is this luck system. So, skimming through it real quick, the practical upshot seems to be that essentially every time you fail a check, and whenever the GM kind of feels like rewarding you, you can be given a luck point, and you can have a maximum of 5 luck points at a time. Then you can essentially spend these luck points in order to improve a die roll to kind of nudge the dice in your direction if you ever need to. So if you just barely miss an attack or you just barely miss a save, you can spend points 1-to-1 to get a bonus to any d20 check that you make. So like they said, if you roll a 13 and you need a 15 to hit, you can spend 2 luck points in order to essentially turn that fail into a success. But of course, you need to accumulate those luck points ahead of time. And so I think this is actually a kind of interesting system. It kind of makes it so that failing checks and attacks and stuff feels a little bit more actual purposeful instead of it just being, oh, I guess I just wasted my turn. And I think that this actually helps out martial characters a little bit more than magical characters, and that's simply because martial characters primarily are rolling attacks on their turn. Now, they still only get 1 per turn, according to this rule, and I'm curious what this would be like if you maybe got rid of that, but I can maybe understand why they wouldn't want to. But a magical character, if they're casting a spell like Fireball, they're not the ones rolling any dice for that, the opponents are. So that actually means that they have slightly fewer opportunities to be gaining luck points than martial characters do. And so I think that could actually be a nice little subtle boon to martial characters, even if it's not exactly the biggest world-changing change to the game. Also, to be clear, this game is based off of the 5th edition standard rules document, so this is very much, even though it is its own unique system, this is very much going to look a lot like 5th edition at its core. So anytime they kind of don't mention a rule or anything, you can kind of assume that it works like 5th edition. I mean, for example, right here, you can see you still have proficiency bonuses, and it has the same progression as 5th edition. You have hit points, hit dice, you have skill proficiencies instead of putting points in skills. Like, it is very much an offshoot of 5th edition. Okay, so moving on to the actual fighter class itself. So, right off the bat, we got a lot of similarities to 5th edition. We got d10 hit dice, you get 6 per level, plus your con mod, simple and martial weapons, all the usual gubbins. So you got your starting equipment. Okay, so first new ability is actually the first one listed, Last Stand. So this is kind of interesting. When you take damage that would reduce your HP to an amount less than half your maximum HP, rounded down, because everything rounds down in these games, You can use your reaction to expend one or more of your hit dice up to a number equal to your proficiency bonus. Immediately roll any expended hit dice, and you regain HP equal to the total sum plus your con mod. And then you can only do this once per long rest. So, okay, so this ability gives fighters a little bit of tankiness. I will say that right off the bat. But I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of the way that it does it. Because assuming that you spend hit dice the same way as you do in 5th edition during short rests, when you do that, you get your hit dice plus your con bonus on each hit dice that you spend. So if you spend, say, 3 hit dice during a short rest to heal yourself, then you get your d10 plus con 3 times, not 3d10 plus your con. So this is essentially a way to spend hit dice mid-combat, but to do so less efficiently than you would normally. So I can see the utility, and it's not the worst first level feature, because it does give fighters a way to regain a fairly significant amount of HP right off the bat. But by spending your hit dice this way, it also means that throughout the adventuring day as a whole, the fighter is actually becoming less tanky, and that's a problem, because wizards already aren't squishy. Like, that's a big problem with 5th edition in general, is that casters are nowhere near as squishy as people think they are. So anything that makes a fighter less able to take damage throughout an adventuring day as a whole, I think is a bit of a problem. I think that this should be changed to at least let you spend hit dice as efficiently as you can during a short rest. This way, you're not losing out on health points by trying to heal yourself mid-combat. It's pure, because that way, right now, it's actually a trade-off. Like I said, you're essentially wasting hit points in order to do it mid-combat. Whereas I think that it would be a lot better if it was purely just a boon, because it's already limited to only being doable once per day, and even at 20th level, assuming that the proficiency bonus is the same progression, you can only spend up to 6 dice. So that's a lot of health, but once per day I think is fine. So I think that they should give you the con bonus on each dice instead of adding the sum total of dice and only adding your con once. It also highly incentivizes you to actually put a ton of points in con. It would make them a lot tankier. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the martial action. So this essentially seems to be their interpretation of fighting styles, like in 5th edition, but making them into more active abilities that are a little bit more interesting to use than, say, just the more passive fighting styles from 5th. So essentially the common thread that I'm seeing from all 4 of these options is that you can essentially use your bonus action to grant yourself some kind of boon. Aim and wind up are fairly straightforward, where aim, you can spend your bonus action to essentially give yourself expertise on your first ranged attack roll after spending the action. And wind up is the same thing, but for two-handed melee weapons. I think that's fine. It's essentially like the sharpshooter feat or things like that, where you can get massive bonuses. Although it doesn't give you a damage bonus, it seems. So it's purely just for attacking. And it feels like you should get a little bit more than just an attack bonus. Maybe a damage bonus would be nice as well. Because, again, I don't know how often bonus actions are going to be used in this version of the game, but if we're assuming things are like 5th edition, as time went on, your bonus action became more and more important as a resource, especially because you could get feats, for example, that would let you use your bonus action for really cool additional abilities. So all of these abilities requiring you to spend your bonus action could be a conflict of interest down the line, but I guess for the time being, it's kind of it's an interesting way to handle these martial actions. There's still a couple others, though. We have Guard, which is the shield-based one. If you intercept incoming attacks. So yeah, you essentially impose disadvantage if anybody tries to attack your ally. That one I actually like a little bit more than the aim and wind-up ones. And then you have Quick Strike, which is basically their dual weapon style, since it requires wielding two weapons. But what's interesting about this is that it doesn't require you to actually attack on your turn. They actually specifically point this out, that this essentially just gives you a bonus action attack that you can use whenever you want, as long as you're using a light weapon and wielding two weapons. So I think that that's actually kind of a nice change, where you can more freely use your main action for, you know, maybe you're multi-classing and you're casting a spell, or you want to use some kind of other feature or ability that uses up your action. But because you're wielding two weapons, you can still essentially treat that as dual wielding, whatever that other ability is, and still make a bonus action attack. So that's probably my favorite buff that they've done so far. The rest of these are, I mean, the guard is actually kind of nice, giving a target disadvantage, or things like that, but the only other thing is that it's not, like, particularly varied. I mean, neither are fighting styles, so it's kind of a grander criticism. The main issue is just that, like, oh yeah, if you're gonna play a ranged fighter, you're gonna take the aim one. If you're gonna play a shield fighter, you're gonna take the guard one. Like, it would be nice if there was a lot more options, and I think they mentioned that they're gonna make as many options as possible later on in this pamphlet, but it would be nice if, like, each style of fighter had to at least choose between multiple options. Like, maybe what they could do is, for example, with the aim and wind-up one, they could have one that's focused on accuracy, and then one that's focused on damage. And then that way, you now choose to either get, like, the expertise bonus or the damage bonus, and then that way, that kind of gives you more actual options as a player, rather than just picking the one that obviously fits with your build. Okay, so moving on, we still got a few more levels to cover. Action Surge. Once per short or long rest, you can give yourself an extra action. This seems to be basically the exact same as it is in 5th edition. No real comments. Action Surge is one of the most powerful abilities in the game, and I'm glad it's untouched. Okay, Discipline. This appears to be essentially their replacement name for a subclass. And we have, it looks like you get your subclass abilities at 3rd and 7th level. I think they changed that in 5th edition, or at least in 5.5. They're trying to standardize subclass abilities. But, I mean, it's kind of a minor difference either way. And, yeah, it's basically just talking about your subclass. Then you have Improvements, and this is actually kind of interesting in a subtle way. So it seems like it's basically the same as normal. You get your feats at 4th, 6th, and 8th, which just like in 5th edition. However, they mention that they are also dividing up feats into different categories based on different classes. At least they're implying that, because they mention the martial talent list rather than the general feat list. So it seems like, by default, a martial character can only take feats, or talents, I'm going to keep calling them feats, but they can only take feats from the martial feat list, and I don't know if there's actually going to be a general talent list in this game or not, and that's kind of interesting, because it kind of opens up a design space to make the feats for specific class groups really powerful, because you can ensure that no other class groups can take them, at least not by default. I'll expand on this a little bit later, because I think they do some interesting things with this system. And then at 5th level, you have your multi-attack, sorry, and you just get 2 attacks. So I think that's the entire base class. I noticed that I don't see Second Wind as an ability, so I think Last Stand is meant to replace Second Wind. And that has me a little bit more concerned, because, I mean, if you had Second Wind in addition to Last Stand, that could be kind of interesting, where you have both the ability to recover hit points with Second Wind for free once per short rest, and then you can get a really big hit point buff by using Last Stand. And only having Last Stand, well, I think that only further highlights my problems with it, because the thing about Second Wind is that it doesn't cost hit dice. It is purely based on your fighter level and a d10. So it's almost like an extra hit dice that you get every short rest, which dramatically increases the amount of health that a fighter can have throughout an adventuring day. Whereas Last Stand is actively decreasing the total amount of health that a fighter can have. Because, like I said, you're losing out on your con bonus on each of those dice, so you're spending them less efficiently, and you can only do it once per day, because it's once per long rest. So, yeah, if there's no short rest equivalent of that with Second Wind, then they've actually made fighters less tanky, and I think that's a big problem. At least it's a huge critique I have for this system. So, right off the bat, just looking at the base class, I think that the biggest thing they need to change is they need to make Last Stand more powerful, and maybe even include Second Wind as well, and especially seeing as there's not really many other base abilities. I could see one being added as maybe a 6th level ability, or hell, maybe just something in addition to Action Surge at 2nd level, or something like that. But yeah, they need to address this problem, because fighters, the last thing fighters need is to be less tanky than they were before, because that's only exasperating the problem. And like I said, the martial actions list, I would make it a lot longer. I would try to give more general options so that people can, you know, actually have choices in their build rather than just picking whatever is obviously designed for them to use. So I think that covers the base class, but we do have 2 subclasses to look at, so I'm going to look at those as well real quick. Okay, so let's look at the Spellblade first, which is essentially their version of the Eldritch Knight. So there's not a ton of abilities here, at least. It only looks like it takes up about a page, and it's already leaking into the next subclass afterwards. So right off the bat, we have the Spellblade progression table, and this appears to be the same as 5th edition. In fact, I already went ahead and took the liberty of pulling up the Eldritch Knight. And yeah, cantrips, you only get 2, spells known, caps out at 6 at 8th level. And then they are still a 3rd caster, so they end up with 4 and 2. So yeah, it seems like they're still doing the 3rd caster progression, which I always felt like was really, really slow for a spellcasting progression, even as a subclass. So hopefully they give it something more to actually work off of. Arcane spellcasting, this, just skimming through this real quick, this seems to be pretty much the same normal. They appear to call different leveled spells rings now, so I guess that's kind of their flavor of how magic works. Yeah, and different arcane circles instead of schools, I guess. You learn 2 cantrips of your choice from the arcane circles. Oh, so like, the arcane circle is, I guess, the arcane versus divine style of magic. Let's see here. You learn more arcane spells, still limited to abjuration or evocation, which I always felt was a bit limiting. Like, I understand not wanting to give fighters, you know, that are dipping into spellcasting the exact same versatility as a wizard, but like, they're already a 3rd caster. They're not going to be able to compete. Like, when do you even get Fireball with this progression system? Level 13? Like, I feel like it's going to be a while before they can even catch up to anything resembling a caster. So I always felt like this limitation was a bit excessive. At least add like a 3rd school. It'd be cool if they could get like transmutation or conjuration, so you can get some teleporting in on there. So, we'll see. Oh, okay. Maybe I should just keep reading, because it says the spells you learn at 8th level and beyond can come from any school of magic. Okay, so that's actually nice. So that actually means that, yeah, so at... now, to be fair, looking at this progression, you only get your next spell at 10th level, so they might have actually... Oh, no, they said 8th level and beyond. So that would actually mean that your 8th level spell can also come from any school. Okay, that's actually better. Never mind. Forget what I said. Maybe I should just actually finish reading the subclass. Okay, so whenever you gain a level of fighter, you can replace... Okay, so you start with the limitation, but it actually opens up, which is actually really nice. Okay, so then we get Enchant Weapon. So I guess this is their equivalent of the Weapon Bond sort of ability, which I always felt Weapon Bond was a bit it's almost feels more like flavor than anything else. Like, you can teleport the weapon to your hand, and like that's nice, but the amount of times it actually comes up is very rare in my experience. So okay, let's actually see what they've done here with Enchant Weapon. You first step on the path of Spellblade, imbue your weapons, short rest. You can imbue that weapon with a limited form of enchantment, so you essentially get the ability to give weapons a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls. That's... I mean, arguably it's better than the teleporting thing, simply because I feel like that would actually come up more often. The only problem that I have with abilities like this is, how does it interact with actual enchanted weapons that you already have? Because that's something that was a problem with the Kensei monk in 5th edition, which is that they also have the ability to grant a +1 bonus to their weapons by enchanting them temporarily, but if you already have a +1 weapon, then this ability basically just doesn't exist, and I think that's a problem. It would be nice if this would at least scale, so that, like, maybe make it half your proficiency bonus, because that way you'd get that +1, +2, +3 progression. Because normal magic weapons cap out at +3. So it's in some ways it's better than the teleporting thing. I feel like there's no reason to get rid of the teleporting thing. That would be nice to have in addition to this. But it would be, I would also like it if this explicitly scaled on top of magic weapons. It doesn't say it doesn't, but the implication seems to be that it doesn't. And if a class ability can be negated by just getting a magic weapon, that feels like a problem to me, because in a lot of games this ability just doesn't, this might as well not exist. So it needs, I think this ability should be changed to explicitly state that it's just a bonus in addition to magic up weapon bonuses. Okay, so moving on, we have expanded talent list. So this is what I was talking about earlier, is that they actually expand on the talent system, so it seems like subclasses can actually dip into a different class group's feat list, and I think that's actually a really interesting idea. It adds a lot more flavor to the individual subclasses, so I could imagine there being some pretty cool spellcasting feats that are normally only exclusive to, like, wizards and sorcerers, and this way, you know, the fighter can dip in on that, especially with the bonus feats that they get. So I think this is actually a really neat idea, and I wouldn't mind seeing this in 5th edition, or rather 5.5, when they introduce that sort of class group feat list system as well. I think it's just neat. It's a minor ability, and you get it in addition to the enchant weapon at level 3, so which means that you get it just in time for your 4th level feat, which means that you could, in theory, spend all your feats on magic feats, which I think is kind of cool. But yeah, okay. So spell multi-attack. When you use the multi-attack class feature to make multiple attacks with the attack action, you can replace one of those attacks by casting a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. You can't cast more than 1 cantrip in 1 attack action this way. I love this ability. This is by far the best thing I've seen so far in this pamphlet. This is just something that's always bugged me about the 5th edition fighters' war magic ability, because war magic just, it's so, it's bad. It's really bad, because I think some people have done the math on this, and I think it's only useful from levels 7 to 10 until you get a 3rd attack, because otherwise, because essentially war magic, you have to replace your entire action with a cantrip, and then you just get 1 weapon attack as a bonus action, which, I mean, you already get a bonus action weapon attack with quick strike, so right off the bat, war magic would have already been pointless in this game. But what war magic, because it replaces your entire attack just to cast a cantrip, cantrips do scale pretty well, but when the fighter gets a 3rd attack, it's really hard to compete with that with just a cantrip, and so it's just a waste of an ability. And one of my favorite ways to fix that ability is to do exactly this, where instead of replacing your entire attack action, you replace a single attack in your attack action with the cantrip. And that is a huge boon in damage and versatility for this subclass, because now not only can you do, like, say, a basic firebolt to do a whopping like 3d10 in addition to 2 other attacks as part of your main action, you can also use utility cantrips, which in general makes them even more viable in combat than they are on a normal spellcaster that has to use their entire action to cast those cantrips. Because, for example, Mold Earth, one of my most favorite cantrips of all time, I could see Mold Earth being combat applicable with this ability. Because imagine I'm like a level 11 fighter, I got 3 attacks. I could spend 2 of my attacks to still keep attacking enemies and contributing to the fight, but then say one of my allies is down, I could use my 3rd attack to cast Mold Earth and create cover so that my enemies can't attack him. Or I could use Mage Hand to grab something while I'm fighting. Like, there's so many cool ways that you could use this ability, and it makes so many cantrips more combat applicable when you're not having to spend your entire action casting this. I know I'm gushing a bit at this point, but, you know, while I do disagree with some of the choices that they've made so far in this pamphlet, this is by far the best thing that I've seen. Okay. So, let's move on to the Weapon Master, which is seemingly their version of the Battle Master from 5th edition, but reinterpreted, of course, for Black Flag. So, right off the bat, so this actually seems to share some traits with the 5.5 Weapon Mastery system, because right off the bat, the first thing you do is you master 3 weapons. Or wait, you choose 3 simple or martial weapons with which you have proficiency, and you master them, and then you get a really minor bonus where you can re-roll one of the weapon's damage dice and use either result. I mean, it's technically an increase in damage, but I'd almost rather prefer just a static bonus, simply because, you know, adding dice or having to re-roll dice just feels like it adds unnecessary dice rolling, and it's such a minor damage bonus. I forget what the math is on it, but re-rolling a dice, you know, statistically speaking at least, is, you know, not exactly a huge bonus. But to be fair, it seems to be mostly a flavor feature for the main meat of the class, which is the stunts, aka the maneuvers, that are their equivalent of that, at least. So let's actually look at the stunts. So you learn 3 stunts, and that is, I believe, the same as the Battle Master here. You start out with 3 maneuvers, so that's pretty much the same. However, you get stunt points equal to your proficiency bonus plus 1. That's actually kind of nice, because in 5 edition, we have 4 superiority dice, which is your resource. And to be fair, you're technically starting with more in 5th edition, because you get 4, whereas here, at 3rd level, I believe your proficiency bonus is only 2 still. So you only start with 3, but this caps out at 7, because your proficiency bonus goes up to 6, whereas this caps out at 6, because you only get 1 more die at 7th level, and another at 15th level. So, it's slightly better, I guess, but that's pretty much it. Both, short or long rest, and that was the same in this one. You place all your dice on a short or long rest, so that's the same, never mind. Yeah, I got a little excited there for a second. Then you have your stunts. So, this is kind of interesting, where now, in order to use a stunt, you have to be using a weapon you've mastered. So you have a lot less free choice of maneuvers than you did with the Battle Master. But I can see this being valuable for opening up design space to make them a lot more powerful. And on top of that, they also limit you to only ever being able to use 1 stunt per turn, which, again, it makes it a lot more limiting, because in 5th edition, you can use 4 stunts a turn if you have 4 attacks, or if you action surge. So, limiting it to only 1 stunt per turn, it's technically a debuff, but in theory, I can see that being a buff if they make these stunts a lot more powerful. So let's actually look at the stunts themselves. So we have Arcing Strike costs 1 point. So right off the bat, the fact that it costs 1 point is also really interesting to me, because that tells me that they're planning on designing stunts that might cost more than 1 point, which means that if they're going to make stunts that cost multiple points, you can only use them once per turn, and on top of that, you have to use them with a specific group of weapons so that you're limited on what stunts you can choose, then these stunts better be really powerful. But, so, let's actually look at them real quick. So, this one requires a two-handed weapon, and you just deal half damage to an adjacent enemy after making an attack once per turn. So let's, I mean, in 5.5, they literally made this a free weapon mastery that you can use every turn without expending a resource. So, right off the bat, I'm not terribly impressed. Cheap Shot. When you successfully hit a target with a melee weapon as part of the attack, you can immediately make an unarmed strike against the target as part of the same attack action. I mean, that's, I guess, kind of nice. It's kind of like a dual-wielding thing, especially if you combine it with dual-wielding. You know, you make your primary attack, you make a free unarmed strike, and you make your bonus action attack. So that's, like, I'm not terribly impressed with, like I said. These should be really powerful. Also, no bonus. I mean, these two grant bonus damage. So let's look at this. Hobbling Strike. When you successfully hit a creature, you forgo dealing damage, and instead reduce the target's speed by half. Okay, I'm really not getting impressed by these abilities. Like, okay, so superiority dice. The reason why they were dice is because you got free bonus damage by default. It was a really nice bonus because it lets you deal actually more damage, which is something that fighters need to deal compared to spellcasters. So they've gotten rid of the dice aspect and reduced it to just a point system, which is theoretically fine. Like I said, you could make these abilities really powerful, but these seem to be on par with the normal Battlemaster abilities. But now you're losing out on the extra dice of damage, and you're only able to use these once per turn, and you're also limited on which ones you can use. I mean, let's just quickly go through these and see if there's any of these that I like. Make it count. You forego all, so again, you're dealing less damage to get extra accuracy, which you already can get plenty of extra accuracy as a bonus action with the default class, so that just feels utterly pointless. Parry? I mean, this one's kind of nice, I guess, but again, this was like a normal Battlemaster maneuver, so Riposte. When a creature you can see within 5 feet again, it's normal Battlemaster maneuver, but without any bonus damage dice or anything. Run through. Weapon that deals piercing damage, that would include ranged weapons. But that's basically the same thing as Arcing Strike. Shifting Strike. You can immediately move to a different unoccupied space within 5 feet. Sweep. Actually, I do like that this doesn't count against the normal amount of movement you have. That's nice, I guess. Sweep the leg. You can attempt to knock the target down. Must succeed on a strength save or fall prone. Okay, I am deeply unimpressed. I was riding such a high after the Spellblade, hoping that they were giving these subclasses something really to work with, but this is actually just a worse version of Battlemaster. Like, Battlemaster, like I said, you get bonus damage dice by default on most of your maneuvers. Or you can use those dice to, like, buff allies or things like that, whereas these are honestly on par with the free weapon masteries in 5.5 that I think are, you know, at least good in concept. So the fact that these are, in some ways, like at best, as good as the free weapon masteries, but they cost a resource, and you can only use them once per turn, whereas weapon masteries and battle master maneuvers, you can use as many times as you want. There's a lot that could be improved here. They should, for one, I mean, basically, make it more like the original Battle Master. Bring back the damage dice. Make it so that all of these things deal more damage by default. And just make them really cool and powerful. I mean, hell, add more stunt points if you need to. And then, what I would love to see is some actual AoE abilities. Like, why does Arcing Strike have to deal half damage when you can't even deal that damage to the same target? Like, if you're having to split up the damage anyways, just deal full damage to the second target. I don't see what the problem is. Like, let fighters and other martial characters have AoE. I would love to see, like, a 2-point ability that's like a whirlwind attack, where you deal damage to everybody within reach of you. Hell, I could see that being a 1-point ability when you only have to do one per turn or something like that. Or maybe, like, you slam the ground and you do, like, a big AoE that creates difficult terrain. Like, that could be really cool as a higher level ability. So, yeah, like, I think I'm going to take this behind the curtain note to heart. I definitely want to see way more powerful stunts and weapon abilities, because these, for all the trade-offs that they got rid of from the Battle Master, these just aren't worth it. Oh, and of course, we have one more ability, the Deadly Flourish. You get 1920 crits, but only with the weapons that you've mastered. That's... I'm not a fan of abilities like that, since it's the kind of thing that only comes up, you know, literally 10% of the time. So, technically 5% of the time, since you would crit anyways on a 20. So, all it does is make it so that when you roll a 19, you now crit. And you only roll a 19 5% of the time, and you're limited to only doing it with the weapons that you've mastered. So yeah, I'm really disappointed in this subclass. Yeah, this was not what I was hoping for. So yeah, I guess to try and wrap up my thoughts in a neat little bow, I have to say, overall, I'm pretty disappointed in this playtest, at least for the fighter. Maybe I'll look at the wizard some other time, but this was really not impressive and not really what I was looking for. If anything, it feels like they've mostly nerfed the fighter, since most of the things are pretty much the same, but subtly worse in many ways. Like, Last Stand is a worse version of Second Wind. The martial action is fine, but like I said, it uses your bonus action, and there's not many options to choose from, so it feels meh at best. The Spellblade, like I said, I love the spell multi-attack, which is really nice, but the enchant weapon is kind of underwhelming, and you still get really slow progression. And the Weapon Master is just a worse version of the Battle Master from 5th edition. Like, when I was giving 5.5's take on the fighter a B-, I almost felt like I was being too generous. Like, in retrospect, I kind of almost wanted to give that a C, maybe a C+, since there's definitely still a lot more that could be done with the 5.5 playtest, and I'm really hoping on the second time through that we get some good improvements on, like, the weapon mastery system and things like that. But after looking at this, I feel a little bit more comfortable giving that a B-, because this has got to be like a D. Like, and honestly, I only feel like it's a D because I really like the spell multi-attack feature. If they got rid of everything else and just kept that, I might be a lot happier. But man, this is not what I'm looking for. And I really hope Kobold Press takes some of the feedback to heart, because I don't think I'm the only one with this kind of response to this. Because, yeah, the last thing the fighter needs is a nerf, and unless they're completely nerfing the wizard into the ground as well, I don't really see a way that this could be viable. And, you know, I skimmed through the wizard a little bit off camera, and it seems mostly the same. There's some stuff about like cantrips, because I think Kobold Press really loves adding stuff to cantrips, so I guess that makes sense as to why they would do the spell multi-attack thing. But yeah, so thanks for watching. If you want to see me make more videos like this, feel free to let me know down in the comments, and I'm always happy to continue the conversation down there. If you want to, give me any advice or comment on anything I've talked about in this video. And if you want to support the channel, as always, feel free to leave a like and a subscribe. It's free, and it always helps defeat the algorithm. So without much else to talk about, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.